All right, so you just watched a video that talked about random sampling. Let's look at a few other important things that we have to consider when we are developing a public opinion poll to ensure that the data that we are acquiring and sharing is reliable and valid, right? So when a poll is conducted, right, you're not conducting that poll with everyone. So every poll is going to have a sampling error or a margin of error. Your sampling error or your margin of error is the difference between what the actual views would be if you were to survey the entire American public versus what that little sample size is, right? Because there's always going to be some margin of error. Typically 5% or less is considered an acceptable margin of error when you're looking at a sample. But again, this is just the differences that are going to naturally occur when you're looking at a small sample population rather than the entire thing. Some other things that we need to look at are the wording effect. The way that a question is phrased or worded can greatly impact the outcome. So if you want to get certain data or certain results, you can word your questions in such a way that is going to influence the response of the people taking your survey. However, if you want genuine analysis and understanding of public opinion, you want to be really cautious in how you word your poll to make sure that it does not influence those taking your assessment. Very, very similar to the framing effect. The framing effect is when information is presented prior to a poll question being asked, and that information that is presented prior could influence the person's perspective as they answer the rest of the questions. I do want you to know that sometimes your wording effect and framing and the order of questions can all kind of compile together and cause issues when data is collected. So with that, if we look at the order of the questions can have quite a bit of an impact. A study was actually done in 2002 asking questions about Bush's performance overall. And it was interesting because when they asked what would they rank Bush's overall performance, and then they asked him about the state of the country, keeping in mind that we had both security and economic struggles as a result of the attacks of 2001 on 9/11. They found that when they asked about his performance before asking about the state of the country, he scored much higher in his performance ratings. However, when they asked about the state of the country and then his performance, he scored much lower, indicating that the order of the questions matter, which is why sometimes pollsters will put questions in different orders to different people, right, to try to filter out that data. Additionally, right, sometimes they will ask the same question 3 or 4 different times using different language, and that is to filter out the effects of different word choice. All right. Another thing to keep in mind is that sometimes people are not always educated or informed about things, but they still seem to provide a response or an answer, right? So they ask about your opinion, and sometimes people give an opinion when they really have no stinking idea what they're talking about. If someone asks you about something and you really don't have information, it's okay to say, I'm sorry, I can't really give you an opinion on that because I don't know enough to give you an opinion, right? But that's an issue. You do see 2 underlying things here saying uninformed citizens and uninformed citizens take 2. These are some really funny videos that Jimmy Kimmel did asking citizens if they like the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare better. They are the same thing, but the people very clearly did not know that. These are not required videos, but I am going to embed them here on this same page. So if you want a good chuckle, I would suggest giving them a little watch to kind of look at the impact of the uninformed citizen and the fact that those people are still answering public opinion polls despite having no idea what it is it's talking about. The last thing that I have up here that I want you guys to consider is the format of a poll, right? If a poll is 100% anonymous, you're going to get more valid and truthful results than if you're standing in front of somebody, giving them a poll, and they know that you know that these are their responses, all right? So anonymity is a really important component of accurate data and results when we're talking about public opinion polling, all right? With that, we're going to kind of switch gears here, and we are going to look at different types of polls. Right? So what are different methods in which we can poll people to get information, and what is their purpose? I'm going to go relatively quickly, but again, remember, if you need to pause the video to get the notes down in your notebook, then that is exactly what you should do. Several of these I do believe are on your important terms and concepts as well. All right, so the first one we have up here is a benchmark poll. A benchmark poll is kind of like a pretest or a litmus test, right? The purpose of a benchmark poll is so that a candidate or a political party can assess the opinion of the public before they finalize their campaign, right? They're trying to get a last little analysis or test about what the people think about things before they solidify the topics and platforms and policies in which they are going to support as part of their campaign, right? So benchmark poll, kind of like a pretest given before the official campaign cycle, all right? A focus group is not really a poll in the sense that we typically think of polling. Rather than giving someone a survey, instead a group of 10 to 40 people are called together and they are asked to discuss several issues or several questions or several candidates. This format, right, might provide some more detailed information, but the problem is that sometimes it's kind of difficult to quantify or synthesize data from a focus group. All right. Then we have a tracking poll. I actually showed you one of these polls in class the other day when we first started this unit. So a tracking poll is pretty basic. It really just tracks beliefs or public opinion over time. So if we look at this graphic, it is looking at the stability in what we think candidates are going to vote for. So if you look, right, at our y-axis, this is probability of the estimate of a candidate vote, and then our x-axis is over time. So this is tracking where they anticipate the votes being over a period of time, all right? So a tracking poll is just looking at data over a period, right? So August, September, October, November, all within 2020 compared to 2016, all right? So other types of polling are exit and entrance polls. The names of these are giving it away a little bit, right? So these are polls that are conducted as people go into or out of an election or polling site. So the place that people go to vote, they're going to survey them. So the way that this works with random sampling is typically people conducting the polls, they're going to actually select poll places at random. So the polling place or location itself is selected at random, and then the people are also selected at random, okay? So what they do as people are going in or out is they ask them, right, who are you voting for, right? How do you feel about this particular topic? And then they code their demographic information in hopes of getting a representative sample so that they can say that we can assume from this sample, this is what we're going to see from the nation as a whole. So exit and entrance, polls taking place as people enter or exit the polling location on election day. All right, approval ratings are just that, right? How much do you approve this president? How much do you approve this policy? So it is very, very simple based approval rating on a very particular topic or a very particular candidate. The one that I'm showing here is from the Gallup poll, and it looks at overall approval ratings of all of the last presidents for quite some time on their 100th day in office, right? So approval poll, looking at the straight approval ratings of particular candidates, okay? Looking at this, some of our major polling institutions, right? And you probably noticed this from the data that I'm showing you, right? A lot of Gallup and Pew Research, because these are very, very reliable. They have clear-cut methodology. They share that methodology. They report their sampling error. Their sampling error is very small. We see similar things with Rasmussen and the Harris poll. All right, so I'm going to show you a couple of little graphs that come from some of these different sources. All right, so this one here is a Gallup poll. And again, it is a approval rating because it's looking at approval ratings of Barack Obama and specific actions that he took. This is a Rasmussen report. This is both an approval rating as well as a tracking poll, because we see, right, it's looking at the overall approval of Donald Trump as well as tracking that data from the 20th of January all the way through the 26th of January, right? Looking at these, the bottom left is a Harris poll. Again, it is looking at an approval rating. It is specifically an approval rating of different industries. And the upper right-hand corner is Pew Research, which is one that I typically use the most. Right, providing some data there. All right, a couple of important things that I want you to note when you're looking at this data, right, or when we're looking at political opinions or political beliefs. The first thing is we need to recognize that political elites, or those in power, typically have greater influence over public policy. They have greater influence in bringing a topic to issue, framing that issue, and setting what is the norms of acceptability. So political elites directly impact policy, but they also have the ability to impact the opinion of the public. We just need to be cautious when we're looking at data, right? Are we looking at data of the general public, or are we looking at data of political elites? Because typically, right, your political elites have a greater intensity and consistency in their values. And that is an important thing to note when we're looking at public opinion data. Last thing, and I'm going to wrap it up for you, some final notes when we're looking at quantitative data. If you are seeing it presented anywhere, right, and you don't need to write this one down, I just want you to listen, right? You should not just trust numbers because somebody says, oh, this percentage of that or that percentage of that. You need to be asking more questions. You need to ask, well, who conducted that research, right? Where did those numbers come from? What was the purpose of the research that they were conducting? What was the methodology that they used to acquire that data, right? How many subjects did they have? What was their margin of error, right? Please don't just trust numbers because numbers are numbers. All right. With that, guys, that's all I have for you. Please make sure that you do get online and do your AP Classroom assignment. All right. We'll chat later.